Good evening, everyone, and welcome to When the Flowers Bloom. My name is Lisa Parker, and I'm one of your co-presidents of the Suffield Players Board of Directors, and we are delighted to have you with us on this beautiful spring evening for a new play written by Joshua Prowser and directed by Karen Garbilosa. If Josh's name seems familiar to you, it's because you've seen him on our stage as an actor and also perhaps seen his work as a director in our Summertime New Faces program. So we know you're just going to love his new play as much as we do. A fun and engaging way for you to interact tonight is by using the chat function on your Facebook page. You can send notes of congratulations and kudos to anybody in the cast or crew, or also to Joshua, just simply by typing your comment into chat. Now, you're welcome to stay after the show when the cast and crew will come together to answer any questions you might have. Again, all you have to do is type your question into the chat box on your Facebook page. Before I close, I just want to thank everyone who has supported the Suffield Players with your time and your talent, or by being a patron, sponsor, or advertiser. We truly could not carry on without everyone's generosity. And so now, sit back and enjoy When the Flowers Bloom.
Hey, sleepyhead.
Oh, hi. Oh, I'm so glad you made it home safely in the snowstorm.
The roads were bad. It was hard to see, but I'm here now. I started a fire in the fireplace. It's freezing in here.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Oh, and I see you made my favorite tea.
Irish breakfast with just a little bit of milk.
Yes. Oh, and thank you for the blanket.
Of course, I wanted to make sure you were warm while we're waiting for the fire to start.
You're so good to me. How was work?
It was fine. Just another 8-hour headache, but it is what it is.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry to hear that. What happened?
My boss, he's just not the most understanding person there is. I mean, he doesn't see things the way that I do. I understand that the insurance industry, it can be a bit personable, but I mean, all he seems to really think about is the customers as, just numbers, as another claim or policy. But I want to be there for the customer. I want to help them and understand them through their difficult situations. Whereas my boss only wants to see the customers as just having customers.
And that's what makes you such a great person.
Uh, you always know just what to say.
Well, I am always here for you.
You know, there is someone at the office that seems to have the same attitude about the customers as I do.
Oh, who?
Delilah, she's only been in the office for a few months now, but she seems to have the same feeling about the customers, same attitude about the customers as I do. And we've talked about how that is important.
That's great. Having somebody who shares that belief must be so nice.
I I agree. But enough about my day. How was your day? I hope it wasn't too boring being here at the house.
Oh no, not at all. No, I slept in pretty late.
Oh, good. That's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I appreciate you not waking me up. I stayed in bed pretty late and didn't do too much during the day, and then I got up and I made myself some lunch as I watched the snow fall.
Oh, that's a good way to spend lunch.
Yeah, it was peaceful. And then I puttered around the house a little bit trying to organize some things.
Oh, yes, picking things up and putting them away, I suppose.
That's right. And then I laid down on the couch, took a nap waiting for you to come home.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late. Like I said, the roads were brutal, and as I was leaving the office, Delilah was trying to clear her car off of the snow, and her snow brush broke, so I decided to give her a hand.
Oh, that is just so like you, so thoughtful. I bet she appreciated that.
Yeah, I think so. I gave her my number in case she needs help getting the snow off her car tomorrow, and she gave me hers in case I need it.
Oh, that's great. Working with people who care like that must be so nice.
Yeah, I agree. So, you said you had a nice lunch? What was it?
What?
What did you have for lunch?
Oh, tomato soup. It's my favorite on a cold, snowy day.
Right, it is. I remember. I just wanted to make sure.
Wow, it is really coming down out there.
Yes, it is. How much do you think is out there?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 inches?
Wow, I thought we'd seen the last of snow. I mean, it's March, so I was hoping that spring would come soon.
Yeah, it would be nice to see some green soon.
It sure would. Spring is such a beautiful time of year.
Oh, it is. There's so much to look forward to in spring. It's a time when new life comes alive, when everything wakes up, when the flowers bloom.
You know what I'm looking forward to? Spring walks, spring days with walks in the woods and coming through the fields of tall grass.
Oh, yes, I'm going down by the river, skipping rocks, watching the fish swim. At night, we could lay out under the stars and see if we can't see a constellation or two. Or during the day, we could fall asleep under a large oak tree. Oh, and the flowers: lilies, violets, tulips, roses, lilacs, lavender.
They will all be beautiful. The ones in the fields and the ones in your garden.
You mean our garden? It wouldn't exist without you.
You're right. The lilies, they're your favorite, right?
My favorite flower?
Yeah,
Yes, always have been.
good. I just didn't want to forget. But Until then, we have all this snow.
Oh, yes, and it's going to be cold for a while, so it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad when we were younger and had nothing to do and nowhere to go. But now, with work and running errands, it's all just a pain.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of younger, do you remember our first snowstorm together?
How could I forget? It was one of my favorite memories.
I can still see myself in my dorm room with you.
That weekend in Kensington Hall is one of my favorite
Oh,
memories.
we were just a couple of silly college seniors stuck in an old dorm with nothing to do.
Nothing to do but drink cheap wine and sing songs and cry so much from laughing so hard.
As we watched the snow pile up around us.
Yes. And we held each other close to stay warm. It was such a simple time.
Oh, but it was a lovely time. Sometimes it's just so nice to think back on memories like that and smile.
I could get lost in them for hours.
Oh, I could too. I was so young and beautiful back then.
You will always be young and beautiful to me.
And I will always love you for that.
Do you remember our last snowstorm together?
Oh, yes, I do. It was last March, about a year ago.
Yep, it was right here on this couch.
We were just holding each other and sleeping by the fire.
Life was a little less simple by then.
Oh, that's right. I just got laid off from my job.
Yep, and Maud just passed. Life was tough at that moment.
Oh, but wouldn't it be so nice to go back to that moment?
I would do anything to go back to that moment.
I know, Alan.
Things got a lot tougher after that.
I know, sweetheart, I know.
2 months later, you were just gone in an instant.
May 24th. It was a nice day from what I remember.
Yeah, we were so happy, getting ready to have friends over.
It was going to be a nice Memorial Day.
Yeah. You were down at the in the backyard in the gardens. I went out to join you, and you were just gone.
It was a heart attack, Alan. No one could have done anything. I had felt fine.
It happened so fast.
I know, but it happened so fast that I didn't feel pain.
I'm glad you didn't feel any pain, but I've been feeling pain every day for almost the last year.
I know.
I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye.
And that, I know. And that's why I'm still here.
What?
The pain you're in. The pain you've been in. You haven't been able to rid yourself of it because you never had a chance to.
What are you talking about?
I feel like I'm a ghost to you, Alan. You won't let me leave you alone.
Emily, it's because I love you. I can't let you out of my heart. I can't forget you.
But there's a difference between remembering me and letting my memory consume you. I feel like you're feeling this way because you didn't get a chance to say goodbye.
That's not true. Even if I had said goodbye, I would still miss you every day.
And while that may be true, I still don't think I'd be here. I love you, Alan, but I don't want to see you hurting over me like this anymore. At least not in this crippling way. You can still hold me in your heart, but you shouldn't see me here anymore.
What do I do?
Continue on. Continue on with your life as you would have. Like I said, you could still hold me in your heart, but I shouldn't be here. You are a
No, it's not what I do.
It's not. Isn't that why you brought 2 cups of tea? Isn't that why you put a blanket out on the couch for me? Isn't that why you look back every day on these memories? How can you carry on with your life when all you do is look back on what's already happened?
It's not that simple. You don't understand. You're not living what I'm living.
You're right. But I know if I was in your shoes, you would not want me weeping over you like this. You would want me out there living.
Of course, I don't know how.
Please, Alan, as one final thing that you can do for me, just let me go. Or not so much let me go, but don't let my memory hold you back. You're still young. You still have so much life left to live.
How do I start?
Well, maybe it would be good to start talking to people who aren't just a memory. There are people who care about you and who will let you in, who you should let in. Be like the flowers, Alan. You will bloom again.
Hi, uh, Delilah? Hi, yes, it's Alan from work. Uh, no, everything's okay. I just thought it would be nice to talk to somebody while we're snowed in. So, you made it home from work okay? Good, me too. Yeah, I am so tired of winter too. I'm looking forward to spring. Oh, oh, it's one of my favorite times of year too. There's so much happiness when springtime comes, when the world wakes back up and when the flowers bloom again. What? Oh, my favorite flower? It's lavender, but I do have a soft spot for lilies. Uh, Yours? Oh, sunflowers. Those are nice too. I have a garden in my backyard that is full of flowers in the springtime, and maybe when it warms up, I can show it to you sometime.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello, we're so glad you all are here tonight and are able to join us for our talk back. We really want to hear your questions, so if you could just put them in the chat feature on in the Facebook app. I have my chat open and I will read them out so that whoever they're for can answer them in real time. But thank you all for being here, and I figure I'll just ask a question of the cast to get us started. So I'm going to just ask about, let's talk to Josh. Josh is our playwright. Josh, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to tell this story.
Yeah, so I wrote this story about a little over a year ago. I think it was April of last year, and there was two real kind of events that catapulted me into writing this. One was right when COVID started, which was like a very dark time, a very difficult time for a lot of people. I think a lot of people felt hopeless and this crippling thing, like how are we ever going to get out of this? And so the blooming of the flowers and this recreating of like a new beginning, that's part of where this came from. Another part was that same time was the 1 year anniversary. 1 year? It was 1 year anniversary of the passing of a high school friend of mine who died very suddenly. And going through that struggle and the struggle that her husband, who was also a friend of mine, was going through, was shown through the story. Both those things kind of inspired and kind of led to what it became.
I love it. Thank you, Josh. I feel like just the honesty of that whole experience just came through so beautifully in the show. So thank you for your beautiful work there. We do have our first question from our audience, and the question is, what is everyone's favorite flower?
Anybody?
All right, I'll go first. Okay.
Steph,
Okay.
I'm going to call name
My
out. Go ahead.
favorite is from a flowering tree would be lilacs. I do like lilacs. And inside flowers, I like any of them. So, you know.
Well, I like orange roses. I historically have loved Gerber daisies, but as I age, orange roses
Awesome.
do it for me.
I
Well-
like sunflowers because it makes me feel like I'm in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Again, I'm tiny. I also really like, I mean, I have a lot of favorite flowers, but Rose of Sharon is a flower that's very personal to me because it was my grandmother's favorite flower. And we planted it, after she passed, we spread her ashes around a bush in my uncle's property. So I would say Rose of Sharon would be another favorite flower.
I like lavenders. I remember seeing an image of a field of lavender. I think I don't know, it stood out in my head, and I think maybe that's where there's a part in the play where it's about going through fields of flowers, and it's an image in my head. I think I saw it in like a National Geographic or something in France. It was just a giant field of lavender flowers. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So so those are my favorites.
Heather's also beautiful.
I love that. Jason, you got one?
Crocuses by far. Yeah, they're the
Ah,
harbinger of
crocuses.
spring.
Yes, they
They
are.
are.
Up from the dead grass.
I love it. That's right. And we've got some in the chat. We have Diana loves lavender and occasionally tulips. Stephanie loves peonies, and Risa loves sunflowers and any that are purple. We have another question here in the chat. So first of all, Bailey says, "Congrats on a great show. Loved the turn in the plot. What was the rehearsal process like for doing a virtual play?"
Wild.
Wild.
I'll let you take that one, Karen.
I would love to. I would say that this has just been a really unique and enriching experience because I really, as a director, I definitely have a process for the way I work a show, and directing a virtual show was like the exact opposite of my process. Was like everything I thought that I always do things in this order, none of that happened in a virtual show. So there was a lot of, I think Jason said it the best when we were in rehearsal about how you have to really see the camera as like a third actor. It really is like a whole nother character in your show, and that's completely true. So we spent hours and hours of rehearsal time just trying to figure out how to play with the camera, how to play with the space, talking about weird things like, remember, you are now 4 inches away from Alan's ear. You probably should be talking a little bit quieter. Things that you would normally just know instinctively being in the same space, but when you're literally talking to a green screen in a room by yourself, you might not realize. So those were some things about my process. Does anybody else want to weigh in?
It was, from an actor's perspective, it was very challenging because you have to fight just about every instinct that you've learned on stage. Because when you get on stage, the first thing you do is you want to make sure that you're seen, that people see you, and that you're heard. And how you're heard is you usually project. But now we're in front of a camera, and I had to really struggle to like really bring down, like really break that habit. And like I feel like I'm whispering, but it's a normal tone to everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is just getting used to working with the camera. You know, and film is different than live theater, and this is a
Yeah.
hybrid of that. And so it was unique, and I'm glad I did it. But it was a totally different experience.
You know what? An interesting thing is a lot of shows in the past year have been written specifically for like a Zoom or for a virtual setting, and a show like this where a lot of it is it's a very emotional and there's a lot of feeling with each other, and it's hard to do that on camera. And I'm just going to take this time to give kudos to you guys, because you really brought, I thought, emotion in the characters that it's maybe a little easier to do when you're on stage, but it's difficult when you're not in the same room with each other. So I thought you guys really did well with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is the challenge, to be disconnected and connected at the same time. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
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 100%. We don't have any other questions in the chat, but I'm going to ask a question of Jason. And if you guys have other questions, please go ahead and chat those. Jason, can you tell us a little bit, what were some unique challenges from a technology standpoint for this particular show?
This particular show, it as opposed to the previous one, Perseus and Medi, which is available on Facebook and YouTube. It's a sitting show, and I didn't want this to be a Zoom play. I didn't want to have two boxes with people looking at each other. And Karen picked up the ball with that and ran with it and made what do you call it when you draw the scenes?
Storyboards.
Storyboards, yes, storyboards for this. So it was very much more of a TV show in my mind, and I'm pleased with how it came out, how it looked technically.
I love it. Me too. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. I'm going to ask, just in case anybody is wondering and wasn't brave enough to chat, when when is Suffield Players going back to in-person meetings in the hall? And the answer there is hopefully this September. So make sure you guys stay tuned. And if you're local, we'd love to see you join us in person in September. Any other questions before we wrap it up for tonight?
We're also looking into doing something in the summer on the green in Suffield. So that will be an intro to our big entrance back into Mapleton Hall in September.
Awesome.
I love it. Looks like we have one more question. We'll maybe wrap up with this one from Connie. Thank you for this story. This is my mom. Thank you for this story. It has been a reflection of my life this past year. I love all the flowers right now, but I'm looking forward to roses. My question to Josh is, would you ever consider making the story longer? The emotions are so deep, and it would be helpful to see the characters wrestle through a little longer. Grief has no timeline. I think this was wonderful. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Thank you for that question and comment. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it, but now that you're saying that, I can see how this can be stretched out, and I think that might be fun to try and play with. So you might have just created the spark I've been looking for lately, actually. So thank you for that, and let's see what happens. That might be the case.
I love it. Thank you. And then now we get some questions here. So Cheryl says, I'm so impressed by the timing that the actors achieved. How difficult was that? How difficult was the timing, guys?
Yeah,
It was super easy.
it was
right,
so easy. No, it was
Oh, yeah.
very difficult. Yeah.
It was difficult. It was difficult.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's really a lot of listening and really focusing in, because you want to, it's harder to listen in a virtual environment than it is on stage, because on stage you're facing each other, but again, you're only I'm looking at a chalkboard, and chalkboard doesn't talk back.
Yeah, exactly. And trying to figure out, if you're looking off at our profile positions, you can't see the screen, so your timing has to be as good as it can be. So
And you can't peek.
it's a challenge.
You can't
Yeah.
peek. You can't
Right.
peek.
Right, exactly.
Like I did.
Exactly.
A lot.
And I think I'm going to toss this one over to Jason. Question from Nick. Do you see this format as something that can continue to happen again even when in-person comes back?
I
virtual
did
theater format.
when we were back in the midst of it, and maybe sometime, maybe next summer, people will say, "Hey, let's get together. I'm out in Nantucket. Can we do a play together or something like that?" But I do not. And maybe we'll feel better once we've all been out for another year together, and we'll be like, yeah, okay, let's go back to virtual. But I think we're pretty much tired of virtual right now.
I could maybe see getting people together that, as you said, that are distant and maybe hosting it in that format, maybe in the middle of winter. People that are all over the country and we're stuck up here in the winter doing something like that. I could see that happening. But you're right. I think people are itching to get back together.
Well, speaking of, let's just wrap it up. I'm going to ask one last question. This show, we really talked about, before we've talked as a cast about this show really being about moving on, and we're, that's kind of symbolic of also where we're at with COVID, with moving on and kind of rejoining life in the outside of the four walls of our homes. So any kind of thoughts or lessons from this show on moving on that we might be able to take into post-pandemic life as we approach that? Anybody want to share?
I think it's important, like the one thing that I've learned from this show, and I think Josh did a wonderful job, like really expressing, and I think Karen, actually, you did a great job of directing, was this idea of you keep reliving your trauma over and over again and not getting out of this cycle because you feel guilty for moving on. And I think that is something that we as a society, and I'm personally going to have to fight through, is just getting out there and realizing, like, you're vaccinated, you're safe ish, mostly very safe. But it's like, it's overcoming that mental break where it's like everything is a danger to you. We've lived in fight or flight for like the last year, so it's easy to it's going to be, that's one thing I'm looking forward to getting away from, is this constant anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
Love
No,
it.
I just
Anybody
think
else want to
you're
add?
right. We've spent this whole year with a lot of anxieties and a lot of concern, and things we took for granted we couldn't do. So I think where people have been able to make up the difference in terms of maybe learning how to cook more, learning how to do different crafts. The introverts are going to have a challenge on the other side because they've been enjoying this world a little bit, so it's going to be just sort of getting back into a new normal again.
Yeah, I think it's also just appreciating the moments and the times you have, like times we had pre-COVID, that maybe we long for, like some of these normal, like in the show, some of these normal moments that maybe at the time, Alan's reliving these moments, and maybe when they happen, he kind of just let them happen, and now he's kind of like focusing on them because he did not focus on them when they were happening. So I think it's just going forward post-COVID is living very presently in the moments that are happening in your life, even if they're just the normal everyday occurrences. That's something I want to try to do, is appreciate those occurrences.
I love that, and that's kind of my takeaway too, Josh, is I always go back to just that line about, things were tough back then, but wouldn't you give anything to go back to that time? Like, I love that line because it's just a reminder to just appreciate the little things and just to value those little moments, because even if sometimes the times are tough, like there will be a time where, you give anything to go back to those times. So just treasuring those little moments. Jason, anything to bring us home tonight?
Well, just in terms of vaccination, Risa and I have gotten vaccinated. It's really a relief from anxiety. You go to the grocery and you see somebody with their mask below their nose and you're like, what are you doing? But you don't want to approach them because you're not the mask police. I'm vaccinated now. I see somebody with a mask below their nose and I go, yeah, that's your choice now, buddy. You know, I hope you're thinking of getting vaccinated because it's simple, easy, painless, and it's such a relief.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Absolutely.
for sure.
I love that. Well, there's lots of great comments here in the chat. I'm going to wrap us up, though, for tonight. I just want to thank you again, everybody in attendance who has watched this live, who contributed with comments, who will watch us in the future in the recordings. Thank you all for being a part of this story. Thank you to Josh for your beautiful
Thank you,
work
Josh.
writing it, for Jason for your technical work, for Risa as our producer, and just so many people behind the scenes who worked really hard to make this happen. So appreciate all of you. Beautiful work, David and Steph. And I hope you all join Suffield Players for our next production.
All right,
Have a
everybody.
great
Bye,
evening,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.